Hello, welcome to The BIM Student. I'm your host Chetna Chauhan. Our today's guest is a super achiever. Not only he's a registered architect in the province of Alberta, he's also a non-practicing lawyer. Surviving architecture degree was just not enough for him, so he went into pursuing law just to have a deeper and a multifaceted perspective during projects, and a better understanding of opportunities which may arise. After a glorious career at Stantec, in 2017, he founded Holo-Blok, a company that is dedicated to fix broken practices in architecture and is leveraging technology massively in doing so. His expertise in BIM and integrated project delivery have allowed him to develop novel practices for project delivery. He aims to provide a product to owners that contains endless opportunities for post-occupancy goals. He is also helping Edmonton Construction Association create solid foundations for standards of digital delivery by being the lead author for digital project delivery curriculum. Please welcome Roddy Honda. Hi Roddy, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me today, Chetna.
Thank you so much for joining on this podcast. And just like the tagline says, because we are all learning, I'm so excited to learn something new about BIM, about digital world in AEC. Let's start with your background and how did you get into BIM, your introduction with BIM. Let's start with a brief journey.
Sure. My first exposure to BIM was actually back in 2005. I was in architecture school and we had our first technology and architecture course. And we got there and my professor, his name was David Beach, and I still stay in contact with him to this date. He brought us into the class and he told us how to open up AutoCAD. And then once we opened up AutoCAD, he said, now close it because you'll never use it again for the rest of your career. And that was never more true. I've actually never used AutoCAD. I've always been in the BIM world, always been working at least in Revit throughout my whole career and throughout school. And there was I had a keen interest in understanding where this was going because it made a lot of sense to me, just simple tasks like drawing floor plans and making sure elevations coordinated with those floor plans. The bidirectionality between geometry and data was very interesting to me. So it's something that from a very early stage in my education resonated well with how I wanted to practice architecture one day. And I constantly strive to learn how to render better, how to leverage the tools better, how to make work a bit more efficient so I wasn't always in the architecture building till all hours in the morning and I could still have some sort of a semblance of a social life through it all. So it was really that this idea that I could be more efficient but highly effective using BIM and Revit and these new technology tools that I brought into my architectural practice from an early stage in my career. When I graduated from architecture school in 2010, I came and joined Kasian Architecture here in Edmonton, Alberta. And the first project I was put on was Epcor Tower. It was the first skyscraper in the downtown for quite some time. And that was the BIM project of the office. And given my experience in school with Revit and BIM till then, it was a good argument to get me on the project. So from there, it almost has gone by in the blink of an eye. I've worked on exclusively Revit projects since then, really tried to leverage the tool to be more effective from an architectural standpoint, but really try to dispel a lot of the myths around it, like this idea that you can't use BIM or Revit to do good designs. That to me was a mountain I wanted to climb and figure out how to actually use this tool to do all the things people told me I couldn't do with it. And then eventually I just decided to build a whole firm around the idea of using technology, using BIM, using Revit to do things better. And that's how my firm Holo-Blok was built. We started out as what we call a building solutions firm, where we provide technology support and implementation for various stakeholders in the supply chain, but we knew we wanted to also be an architecture firm, so we try to practice what we preach on that side, using the tools to elevate design and create a better product for our world and bring design back into the projects we see in our communities.
One thing I really found good with all the BIM softwares that I've been doing, that the disconnect is gone. Like if you think something, you can actually see it live. You can just not just have to do a floor plan and extrude it, but you can actually draw and design and visualize it without just imagining in your head.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of merit to that, and I'm the same way. I kind of get I get into the weeds when I'm trying to make a design decision, and it's a lot easier to explore those weeds in Revit or in BIM. But that being said, we still do a lot of sketches and conceptual work by hand because we want to, fluidly explore ideas, sketch over each other's work. But from a very early point in the process, we're just like you. We like to put that into Revit so that we don't go too far down the road before realizing we made a mistake or didn't fully consider a certain aspect of the building. So, I completely agree with what you're saying. You're in a position where you can consider the impacts of your design decisions much earlier. And I think when you do that, you can be much more effective in how you progress your design.
Oh, okay. So we talked earlier also. I really find this tagline on your website interesting. Architecture is broken. And first of all, how do you think architecture is broken? And how has working with BIM and working with digital technologies helped you fix your stuff in architecture?
Yeah, I think architecture and design and construction is broken on so many levels, and probably one of the most basic levels it's broken is it's a very fragmented and siloed industry. You don't have many people working collaboratively. We claim to work collaboratively, but not to the extent that I think some other industries work collaboratively. And I think a lot of that stems from procurement models out there, and we have a strong interest in different procurement models that we like to take on from a design perspective. But in general, design and architecture has a bit of a bad name. It's not valued as much as it used to be, or maybe as much as it's valued in other jurisdictions. You go to some other places in the world, like Japan and certain economies in Europe, and
Singapore.
Being an architect is viewed as a very admirable profession, and I don't think it has the same respect here in North America. And surely our services aren't valued to the same extent. We're always getting ground down in terms of our fees. People don't see the value in what we do. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the way we used to do things, there was nothing really special about the process, nothing very special about the end product, with exceptions to all these broad statements. And I think there was this notion that if you generated a profit in architecture, it was a bad thing. And all those things together led us to believe that architecture is in fact broken. And we wanted to correct that in our own practice in several ways. My other background, in addition to being an architect, is I'm also a non-practicing lawyer. So from a procurement standpoint, we really wanted to study procurement models. We wanted to look at these myths of the industry and really start to dispel those around things like copyright and sharing information and making sure that everybody had access and could contribute to a project in the most linear way possible. And only because we're equipped with that other knowledge do people tend to listen to our perspectives, or at least take them into account. So we've been able to break down some barriers there. And those barriers are essential to breaking down if you really want to do BIM properly. Because I think at the heart of BIM, you need to be able to share your models with all your partners. You need to have people contribute to those models, whether they're doing fabrication modeling, whether they're doing construction phasing or sequencing, or they're adding metadata to the elements. Everybody has a part to play within this industry now that it's becoming so specialized. We never used to have specialty consultants for acoustics and life safety, and all these other aspects of buildings now have specialty consultants, and each of those partners have a part to play in a project. So if they really adopt BIM and they can really contribute to this broader federated building information model that everybody can leverage and that we can pass on to the owner, then I think you really start to see the advantages of BIM. And I think when you start to adopt that kind of methodology in industry, a couple things start to happen. The first thing is the owner gets a ton more value. If they spend $10 million on a building, they get much more value than they used to, because there was a lot of waste in the process. There was a lot of reproduction of work. There was a lot of loss of information and just apprehension and fear of sharing data or knowledge. And when you're in a true BIM world and those items are addressed, now the owner can get much more value for that $10 million in their building. And maybe we can build better assets with more longevity that can last a lot longer and reduce our carbon footprints. But I think the other thing that starts to happen in a true BIM environment, and it's something that's important to us, is everybody can make a profit, and that's not a bad thing. Because if everybody eliminates some waste in the process, if everybody is able to generate more value for that owner, but do it with a lot less effort than maybe we were able to do in the past, because we're all now leveraging the collective knowledge of the group than singular knowledge, then we all can make a bit of money in this profession. And I think that's what everybody's doing this for at the end of the day. You can say you're here purely as an architect, but if you can't feed your family, you're not going to do it very long. So
right.
I think those are some of the main ways that this whole industry is broken. And the fact that we haven't been able to progress as well as some other industries and become more efficient and become more profitable and modernize how we practice in this area demonstrates why we're a broken industry. But I think you're starting to see that shift a bit with particularly the adoption of BIM and the way that people are starting to change their thinking so that we can do BIM better. And once we do that, maybe we start to mend the industry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I had a practice back in India. My first 2 years, I just had to learn how to ask for money. Like, I did this amazing stuff for you. Can you pay me for this? No architecture school actually teaches you to sell your services the right way.
No, and it's unfortunate that there's not an element of business in architecture school, because that's really what you're doing, is you're running a business. If you ever start your firm, maybe there's this idea that you'll be reliant on the firm that you join, but those firms are also run mostly by architects. And if those architects didn't have any business training, you're kind of being thrown into this organization that doesn't really understand how to run a business. So it's kind of this self-perpetuating issue. The other thing is we're our own worst enemies, because right now we're in this environment where everybody's racing to the bottom for fees. And when you race to the bottom for fees, and that's the only prospect of actually winning the work, you're actually setting a precedent that your fees or your services aren't worth that much. And it's a very hard thing to overcome down the road. When that same client comes back to you, you can't really say, oh, I charged you 50% of what I should have before, and expect to get the work. So what we've done from a really early stage in our practice is state that we're going to always go by what the recommended fees are in the Consulting Architects of Alberta guidelines, and we're not going to compromise on that. It means we don't always get all the work we want, but it also means that when we get the work we want, we know we're making good value for that.
You said that you stick to the norms of the guidelines of Alberta Society of Architects, right? Now, do you even charge extra for doing your work in BIM environment? Like some of my project managers in my previous employments, they would say that, oh, we're working in a software that's more expensive, or we're hiring more specialized people to do this work. So we should charge our client extra. But then the client always says that we are already, paying you for what we want. Now it's your choice what software you want to work in. So how do you justify that?
Yeah, I mean, we take the latter approach. I don't think that argument really is valid. I think what firms are trying to do is pass on the cost of training to the owner. And I don't really think that's what you should be doing. I think instead what you should do is learn how to be more effective with that fee. So we don't charge for any extras. I mean, we have certain limits on our fee. We don't, expect the project to go on twice as long, or we don't expect the project to be twice as big and not get compensated for it. But the other thing that we do is we're really good at using that tool. So we don't charge for renderings. we include renderings in our process because it's a byproduct of how we work. It's a certain quality of rendering. It's not going to be, what some visualization firms out there can produce when they get paid $5,000 a render, but they're still really good renderings because we've gotten really good with our tool. And at the end of the day, we're much more profitable working in Revit. I would have to charge more money to work in AutoCAD at this point because the tool, it's all about knowing the tool. And if you know the tool and you can deliver that project more effectively with that tool, I don't understand how you could actually ask your client to pay you more money for allowing you to be more effective. It would be, in my mind, akin to having a woodworker charge you more money for using a table saw than a hacksaw. And you would never ever, I don't think any carpenter out there would charge somebody more money because they're using a power tool for the job. Even though that tool costs more money, it allows that carpenter to be more effective with that tool. And what we're seeing right now is just somebody trying to pass the initial cost of investment over to the owner. And I don't think that's right. And I think it gives owners a bad taste in their mouth about what BIM really is about. It would, going back to the carpenter example, I've never hired a carpenter and he's charged me for the cost of his table saw in his first bill because it costs him more money. It would just be absurd, and there would be pushback on that. And I'm glad owners push back on it.
Right. So we talked about BIM and we talked about digital project delivery. Do you want to just throw a little bit of light that how a digital project delivery is much more than just working in a BIM model?
Yeah, so digital project delivery is an interesting term. It was actually coined by, I think, several people over the last 5 or 10 years, but it really was embodied in Alberta when Alberta infrastructure used it to capture all their facility management and asset information management requirements. So it started as just really a handover piece. How do we hand over a digital asset to the owner so that they can use it for the purposes of operations and maintenance? And what we did is we tried to take that idea and expand it and really have it encompass the whole process. So working with organizations here in Alberta, including the Edmonton Construction Association and the International Facility Managers Association, Northern Alberta chapter, we created 2 curricula called Digital Project Delivery and Digital Project Delivery for Owners. And the idea of digital project delivery is let's make every single aspect of design, construction, operations, and maintenance digital. Let's take tasks and activities that we used to do more in an analog format, and let's make it digital in the sense of what we're trying to do with BIM. Let's make that a database of information that everybody can contribute to. Let's make it a database of information that everybody can leverage and pull from. And then coincidentally, it also is the database of information that starts to inform your Revit model. Maybe that data is bidirectional. A good example of this kind of thinking would be using something like DeRofus. So you use DeRofus in the early stages for planning out your rooms, planning out your functional program. That's historically something we did with Excel spreadsheets or pieces of paper or blocking diagrams. But now DeRofus allows you to do that digitally. And now let's take that asset that we're creating as a team and let the next people use it. So maybe that's our conceptual designers start pulling from that database. And not only are they pulling from that database, but they're adding information back in. They're adding room proportions, they're adding locational information. All that stuff starts to keep growing the database. So now the database isn't just DeRofus, it's DeRofus and the Revit models. And maybe there's other things that goes into, like Procore. So now you've got all your construction submittals, you've got all your deficiencies, all your changes, all your site instructions, all consolidated in one location. And then during construction, let's get the trades involved and let them contribute back to the models. So maybe they're on site typing in serial numbers into DeRofus or into Procore, and all that information is flowing back and forth, so that at the end of the day, when we turn over the project to the owner, they've got a true digital twin. And that digital twin is all the models, all the data, all the submittals that are not necessarily a part of a model. And they can take that in a structured way and take that data and integrate it into their CMMS or their BMS, or associate it with IoT sensors. So at the heart of DPD is data. It's data that everybody can use. It's data that everybody can contribute to, but it's structured data that can be used for whatever purposes that are available to industry now at this time, and that we know are coming in the future with things like IoT and artificial intelligence.
And smart cities.
And smart cities.
E-permitting.
Yeah.
And cloud permitting. I am so looking forward to that I can actually submit a BIM model on a city website and they use a program and not a person to assess my model. Like,
absolutely,
there should be no personal prejudices there.
Absolutely, and I think it's starting to come. You're starting to see some owners that are open to this, but everybody needs to be open. We've got a client right now, and they're doing a fit up of a new building that they have on a campus, and now they're looking at ways of how do we change the traditional roles and responsibilities of people so we can eliminate waste, because design intent drawings have very little value to constructability. You need to get those trades in early, and you need that design intent model to become a fabrication model very early in the process. Otherwise, you're burning a lot of money and fees on the consulting side only for the trade to do that again. And it's not like it's a new concept. We've been doing shop drawings forever. It's just now shop drawings can be in a model rather than, a sheet of paper that was generated from AutoCAD. So it's all about looking at where are those redundancies and overlaps in the process. How do we eliminate that redundancy, and how do we make the whole process more linear and dependent on data? That's kind of what that's what at the heart of digital project delivery. And that course is taking off again. We're doing it again in March with the Edmonton Construction Association. So we're starting to see a lot more excitement about this philosophy in Alberta and in Edmonton, but hopefully we can see that grow into other jurisdictions as well.
You and there are other people, and let us all take it together, and when collective voices will
well, I'll send you the link, and since now we're all in a digital world, anybody can attend the course. So if you know of anybody that's interested in it, then I would love for you to share it.
For sure. I can talk about this forever and ever, but I want to keep the interest going, and that's why I would just switch to the next section that we have, which is Impossible Questionnaire. These are 5 questions, and I randomly just picked them from a big questionnaire that I have.
All right.
So let's see. So you're aware of ISO 19650?
Yep.
Right? So quickly tell me how many parts ISO 19650 have, and just give me like a broad definition of any one part.
Oh my God. I don't have that memorized. Can I Google it?
No.
ISO 9650. Oh, I can't even. I know there's a definitional section. I think that's probably part 1. How many parts there are in the whole document? I would guess 8, but I have no idea.
Okay, so these are total 5 parts. And then there is a part 0, which is a transition guide. So that ISO 19650 was evolved from BS 1190. Yeah. Correct, yeah. So that's the transition guide. So part 0. But then part 1 is the one which actually talks about the concepts and principles of information exchange and information management for buildings. And the last part is, I really like to talk about it, and maybe in future we can talk about it, is security of data. Like, how do you keep your data secure? What are the protocols of securing the data? So that's a very interesting part. So we always work with the MEP engineers all the time. Do you know what code or what standard do electrical engineers follow in Canada for doing electrical design?
Oh, I feel like I should know this because I'm doing some fabrication modeling right now, but I think I don't know. I think, is it CSA?
Yes, it's CSA, but do you know the exact part number?
I don't. No. 1100?
Yeah, no, it's CEC or CSA 22.1. Or we also follow NFPA 70, which is the US standard. So we can, it's interchangeable. Okay, this one is from the contract documents, the CCDC documents. I have a feeling you would know this, but let's see. So let's say under the terms of CCDC 2, if any party fails to make a payment when it's due, what are the interest rates and when do they become active on the payment?
Oh, this is changing now because the Builders Lien Act is changing in Ontario and Alberta. So there's now prompt payment legislation. I think in CCDC, the payment terms are 30 days. It's either 30 or 60 days, I think. And I think interest is 4%.
Okay, so for first 60 days, it's 2%. And then after 60 days, it's 4%.
Oh, I need some of the numbers, just I don't know how they fall together.
The next question is, what is ISO 9000?
I think that's the certification for how records are managed. Is that right?
That's a quality assurance certification.
Okay. Maybe it's 9001.
Yes. Okay, and the last one. I'm going to list a few building materials that we use for envelope.
Okay.
And you have to tell me that which one of them has the lowest thermal conductivity. So which one would you prefer if you want a building to be more energy efficient?
Okay.
So red brick, reinforced concrete, glass, steel, aluminum composite panel.
Aluminum composite panel.
Awesome. So you were able to answer one question completely.
One. That's okay. I'll take my
complete. Yeah, so steel has the highest, aluminum composite panel has the lowest.
There you
But
go.
I was amazed to see that reinforced concrete is more than twice of red brick, and we use so much concrete.
It's twice as more conductive?
Yes, than red brick.
Is it because there's steel inside of the reinforced concrete and that makes it more conductive?
Maybe.
Because I think brick, you've only got air, and air is actually an insulator to some degree. So maybe that's why it's better. And they do it per inch, right? So
yes.
It's like a 3 3/8 inch brick is probably not as conductive as, or not as good as a full cast in place reinforced concrete wall, but there's a lot more wall there. That's probably that's where what I would think, why we would think that the concrete wall would be better.
Thank you so much, Roddy. I'm so glad we had this conversation. I'm definitely going to bring you back for another episode, and we'll discuss more about laws and Construction Lien Act and other stuff and other BIM stuff. But for this episode, this is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and all the best. I can't wait to hear this when it's live.